My friend called me at midnight, but he's been missing for 2 weeks. The call came at 12:03 a.m. sharp. My phone's sudden buzz pierced the quiet of my dark bedroom. Half asleep, I reached for it, squinting at the screen. No name, just an unknown number. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice heavy with exhaustion. Static, thick, crackling, static filled the line, making my skin crawl. Then, I heard it. His voice. "It's me," he said. I froze. It was unmistakably my best friend. The same best friend who had vanished without a trace 2 weeks ago. Where are you?" I stammered, my heart racing. He let out a faint chuckle. It wasn't warm, though. It was hollow, like someone mimicking laughter, but not understanding what it meant. "I just wanted to hear your voice," he said. The room felt colder. I sat up, gripping the phone tightly. "We've been looking for you. Everyone's worried. Are you okay? Tell me where you are." The static swelled, and his voice cracked through it, quieter now. "You shouldn't have been looking." "Stop looking." My breath caught. Something was off, something wrong in the cadence of his words, in the emptiness of his tone. "What do you mean? What's going on? Please, just tell me where you are." After a pause that stretched just a second too long, he whispered, "Do you remember the lake?" "The lake. The old trail we used to hike as kids, hidden deep in the woods, far from town." "Yeah," I said cautiously. "Come alone," he said. "You'll understand." The call ended abruptly, leaving me sitting in the dark with the phone pressed to my ear. My hand trembled as I stared at the blank screen. For a moment, I considered calling someone, but who would believe me? I barely believed it myself, against my better judgment. I grabbed my jacket and flashlight and drove out to the lake. The roads were eerily empty, the kind of emptiness that presses on your chest and makes you feel like the world's holding its breath. When I reached the trail, the air was thick with fog, swirling in tendrils that seemed almost alive. The beam of my flashlight barely cut through the oppressive darkness as I walked deeper into the woods. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. And then, I heard it, a faint voice, calling my name. I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would burst. The voice came again, this time closer. "Over here," it said, familiar but wrong, distorted like an old recording played on broken speakers. I followed the sound to the edge of the lake. The water was unnaturally still, like a sheet of black glass. And there, standing by the shore, was my friend. "Hey," he said, smiling, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. I stepped closer, my flashlight trembling in my hand. "Where have you been? Everyone's been looking for you." His smile widened, stretching just a little too far, his teeth gleaming unnaturally in the dim light. "I'm fine now," he said. "I just wanted to see you." Something about his voice made my stomach churn. It wasn't just the words, it was the way they seemed to echo, even though the night was perfectly still. "I don't understand," I whispered. He tilted his head, the movement jerky, almost mechanical. "Come closer," he said. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet refused to move. The air around him seemed to ripple, like heat waves rising off pavement, distorting his outline. As I hesitated, his expression shifted. His eyes, which had been dark and empty, seemed to reflect the lake behind him, shimmering, endless, and impossibly deep. "Why are you afraid?" he asked, his voice quieter now, almost pleading. I took a step back, and his smile disappeared. "You shouldn't have come," he said flatly. Before I could respond, his face began to change. His features twisted and stretched, like a mask melting off his skull. His eyes sank deeper into his face, leaving hollow voids that seemed to stare right through me. The air grew colder, and the fog around us thickened, closing in like a living thing. I stumbled back, my flashlight flickering wildly. "You're not him," I whispered, barely able to form the words. He, or whatever it was, took a step forward, his movements unnatural, like a marionette controlled by invisible strings. "We're waiting," he said, his voice now layered, as if 100 other voices were speaking through him. I turned and ran, the fog clawing at me, the sound of his voice chasing me through the woods. It wasn't just calling my name anymore. It was laughing, screaming, whispering things I couldn't understand. When I finally made it back to my car, I didn't stop to look back. I drove home, shaking, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly they hurt. The next morning, I checked my call log. The call was still there, time-stamped at 12:03 a.m., but the number, it wasn't his. I haven't gone back to the lake since that night, but sometimes, when I'm alone and the clock strikes midnight, I hear his voice again. Not on the phone, but in the silence around me, whispering, calling, and I know, deep down, that whatever I saw that night is still waiting for me.